All right, everyone, how are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, Lisa and I talk with Dan Cleary. Dan is Jane's Addiction's longtime guitar and bass tech, but he didn't start with Jane's Addiction. Well, an iteration of that band. He talks about growing up in Boston, moving out to LA, getting that gig, which was his first gig. Not bad. He also tells us a story about being punched in the head by a notable quote-unquote rock star. You got to listen to find out who that was. And then we get into a little bit about UFOs. UFOs, those kind. It was a lot of fun getting to know Dan, and we hope we have a long-time relationship with him. Before we get into it, there was a few technical issues, but when you come to expect that from modern-day technology, you hear where it drags or stops a little bit, but the guts of the interview are all there. You know what we're talking about. You know the point we're trying to get across. It was a lot of fun. Let's check it out. Tell everyone who you are.
Hi, my name is Dan Cleary, and I have been a guitar tech for almost 20 years, since 2005, and going strong.
Nice. Right on, man. Right on. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Acton, Massachusetts, which is like a suburb of Boston, maybe 20 minutes outside the city. And I moved to LA in 1999 when I was 19 to be in a band. And I was sure that, by the year 2000, I was going to be a huge, millionaire rock star. It didn't work out, but I ended up getting, pretty close to the same thing, living vicariously through others with a pretty good career.
Yeah. Sometimes the techs are the rock stars, man.
I like your attitude.
So how did you get into this tech thing, man?
Sure. Yeah. When I moved here in 99, and the first friend that I made was a guy named Steve Isaacs. Steve used to be a VJ on MTV, and we became friends right away in 99. I lived with him off and on through the years. And in 2004, Jane's Addiction had broken up with their lineup that had, Perry Farrell, Dave Navarro, Chris Chaney, Stephen Perkins. They broke up, one of many times they've done that. And the three guys, Stephen, Chris, and Navarro, wanted to start a new band. Navarro's manager was a woman named Larissa Friend, and her boyfriend was Steve Isaacs. So he was a great singer. He sang on Broadway for years. He was Tommy on Broadway for the the Who thing, and he ended up being their singer. They started a band called The Panic Channel in 2005, and that's when I first met all the Jane's guys. And my best friend Steve was singing and kind of playing a little bit of guitar in that band. And they were going to go on tour, and Steve asked me, "Do you want to come be a guitar tech?" And I said, "Yes, I would love to." What is that? I had no idea what that even was. And he just explained I'd be taking care of him and Chris Chaney, and setting up guitars, turning on the amps, making sure things don't go wrong. And that was 2005. So I never really even had to pay my dues. Like, my first tour was in a very nice bus, and had my own hotel room, and luckily I bypassed all the hard stuff. So sorry to everybody who had to pay the dues, but I was very lucky. And I headed off with those guys right away, and I've been on the road ever since.
Right on, man. You know what? You and I have that in common. I started with a headliner as well. I was a runner, and it was a country artist, but dude, I started in a bus, my own bunk,
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty good.
I apologize to you guys as well.
The peasants, the peasants out there.
Yeah. Listen, no club dates for me.
Right.
So yeah, it's very similar, man. I started in 2007, so not long after you, and so it's kind of strange doing that. I eventually made my way down to a van and trailer.
Sure.
Which I enjoyed.
I've done like short little 1 week runs, and actually my coolest van tour was Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins and Navarro. Well, Billy had this project called Spirits in the Sky. It was like this weird 70s kind of hippie super group that he put together. And we did a little West Coast van tour with those guys, and that was pretty cool. Being in a van with Billy Corgan and Navarro for a week was interesting.
Right on. Were you a fan of James when you got asked for that? So when you came in, I know Steve. I've heard the name Steve. I remember when he was around. So you had seen some celebrity, some type of celebrity, but were you like kind of awestruck, to be in the room with these?
100%.
Because these guys
100%.
are legends, man.
Yep.
They were legends then.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a bass player. I started playing bass when I was 12, and Eric Avery, the original bass player for Jane's, is the reason I started playing bass. Just in my opinion, this is the best bass lines ever written. So he wasn't in the band when I started meeting those guys, but eventually I started working for him when he came back. But I was a huge Jane's fan. So trying to pace myself with asking Navarro, Perkins, and Chris Chaney all these Jane's stories, I had to pace myself because I didn't want to blow it too quickly,
Yeah.
How did you start playing? Did you come from a musical family, or
not
did
even?
You just
my mom
just
was, yeah. My mom was a barber, and my dad's a truck driver, so there was no real musical. My grandfather played organ, but I was just kind of always a little bit different from my family, and spent a lot of time just by myself in my room, watching movies, listening to music, and just kind of like escaping through music and movies. And I had a friend, one of my best friends played guitar, and we wanted to play music. And he's like, well, I play guitar, so you should probably learn how to play bass. And I already liked the sound of bass anyway. And that was that. And self-taught, I never took any lessons, and just the slow grind of just figuring it out.
Yeah. Do you find that limiting at times, being self-taught?
Not really. Yeah, I didn't learn like the rules of music, so I was able to just kind of experiment, and whatever sounded good or cool, that worked for me. Which strangely is the same way that Eric Avery kind of learned. Just no rules, no limits, and then we start plugging in delay pedals and reverb pedals. Then you can just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was that first tour like?
That was with the Panic Channel, and which is the Jane's guys and Steve Isaacs. And it was a blast. Being with people that were like, everyone was cool. The whole crew was cool. The band was cool. We're on a nice bus. It's my first time, being in all these different clubs and small theaters and trial by fire. There was a couple times forgetting to plug in a pedal board when the show started. Learning quickly that gaff tape is your best friend. Always have gaff tape. You know the deal.
Even at home.
Even at home, there's some there's a roll about 1.5 feet from me right now. But it was great. There you go. Exactly. It was just eye opening, and I was open to learning. I knew I didn't know shit, so I figured just let people tell me what to do and pay attention. And it was really neat. At that point, I realized, I can do this, and also, see friends and family around the country on somebody else's dime. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Totally
cool.
Yeah. And I've always been like a night owl. I've always been a late night kind of person. So I think falling into this just kind of matched my natural lifestyle anyway. So I enjoyed it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even after the show, you go back to your room or whatever, and you're kind of just there alone. That was your thing.
Yeah. That's me anyway. Yeah. my whole life I've been up until 3 or 4 in the morning watching TV or listening to music. So yeah, it fit me very well.
All right. What was your first, like you said, trial and error? I've had some crazy, I think one of the most embarrassing things I ever did is we were doing an acoustic show, and I got the guitar, tuned it up, and as I was bringing it out to him, I forgot to unplug it from the tuner. So here I am dragging a tuner across the stage. That was early in my So did anything like that ever happen to you?
Of course. Yeah, of course. When something's going wrong on stage, 30 seconds can feel like 10 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
So going out with the Panic Channel, have you always been Dave's guy since then? Have you?
No, actually on the Panic Channel, I wasn't his guy. I just took care of Chris, the bass player, Steve, the singer, but Dave and I hit it off really well. Just the same dark sense of humor. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And so we became friends on that, but he had a different guitar tech on that tour. And after that Panic Channel, we did 2 tours. After that, I got invited to go do Marilyn Manson for a world tour, my first world tour. And after that tour, I got home 2008 from that, and I hit up Navarro, and I basically said, you and I don't hang out enough. Why don't you fire your other guitar tech and hire me? And he just said, okay. And that was that. And I've been with him since 2008. So we're in coming up on 17 years now, I think.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Who'd you look after on Manson?
When I first got there, I was taking care of Chris Vrenna, who was playing keyboards at that time. So I was a keyboard tech, which on that particular gig was just the easiest gig ever. Chris Vrenna, obviously, Nine Inch Nails was his big band. He was one of the day one Nine Inch Nails guys, and Nine Inch Nails is my favorite band of all time. So getting to work for him again, I'm like, I have to ask a bunch of questions, but I got to pace myself. And I mean, he's truly like, Chris is the nicest person I've probably ever met in the business, and it was very cool to see the world with him.
I just talking to you, you kind of, you seem a lot like me when you're around somebody that you admire. Like you have to pace yourself, but at the same time you're fanboying inside.
Yeah, of course.
I know that Lisa makes fun of me a lot because I fanboy a lot.
Oh, I don't think you're fun.
What are your guys' jobs on tour? What do you guys do on tour?
Well, I'm
do
a
not
bass
work on
tech.
tour. He's a bass tech.
Okay.
I just work a regular job and produce this podcast for him.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Bass tech that's a good gig. That's a good gig.
I always say if I get hired as I'm a guitar tech, and then when I got hired with Duran Duran, I became a bass tech, and so that's kind of my label. And if I get called for a bass tech gig, I know it's pretty good because they hire just a bass tech.
That's true. That's true. And now also you're working for such an iconic bass player too, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, he's good, man. He's pretty cool.
I mean, he's a beloved person in that world of music too. Just a superstar.
Yeah, he is. And we've been together. He and I have been together for 14 years. So
love that.
So yeah.
I was just talking last night to a friend of mine about like the relationship of tech and artist. And once you get past a few years, you definitely start to like almost share a brain. And part of the job is anticipating, and like you learn to tell, like there's a look in his eye and you know exactly what that means. Body language, you can read it from across the stage, and it's a really neat thing once you kind of lock in and stay in that mode for a while.
I tell Lisa all the time, like it may look like he's just looking over to the side stage, but he has a different look for everything. Like I know when he wants a drink, I know when he wants Advil, I know when he wants this. Yeah, I know when he's mad.
That's the big one.
Which he doesn't get mad that often, but
Well, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah, but I since you've been teching, is there any particular like something that you've learned over the last 17 years that you can't do your gig without?
I mean, obviously, a tuner is the number one. But aside from that, not really. Like I don't like need like what do you mean exactly?
Like to me, one of the biggest things that in the last several years, I'm always looking at. Like I buy every tuner that comes out. So, but that's a neurotic thing with me. But like the ESP spanner, you know what I'm talking about? The little
No.
flat thing that goes under the knob so you can tighten the nut. So,
yes.
so when that came out, I was like, this is a game changer for me. You know?
Sure. Why do you get all the new tuners? Why do you do that?
It's a you want to know why? I'm going to tell the story right now.
I do.
When I was a kid coming up and at my friends, when I first started hanging out with my friends and they had bands, they had the TU-12. Do you remember the TU-12 with the needle? And I thought that was so cool. I really couldn't afford anything like that. So once I started being able to afford a tuner was the biggest thing for me. Like I would just every new tuner that comes out. Like my latest one is the Canvas tuner. I think it's the Warm Audio Canvas tuner.
I have no idea.
So yeah, I buy all the tuners. Peterson. I have so many tuners. It's ridiculous.
Wait a minute. Are you one of these guys that has like 2 or 3 tuners in line at the same time?
No.
Okay, good.
I only use one.
That.
I'm not the guy that runs through the strobe tuner into the regular tuner. I'm like, whatever he's using on stage is what I'm going to use.
Well, I just use, I've had like basically the same Boss tuner for like 15 years. Just one tuner. That's all you need.
It's a neurotic thing with me. Anything else, like I don't. And then I've recently got into, hey, how do we turn this around on me, by the way?
I'm good at this. I know what I'm doing here.
I've recently got into like the modelers that I figure I need to learn how to use all these modelers, but I really don't. I just need to know how to use his.
Right.
But I'm always terrified I'm going to get a gig and I'm going to walk in and they're like, hey, you need to know how to use this, quad cortex. And it's like learning to land a plane,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not a very good guitar tech. Like, I don't know any of that stuff. I can do simple things really well. It'll sound the same every night. But when people talk about building all these crazy rigs, I have no idea. Axe effects and fractals, and I don't know any of that stuff. And I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know until 5 years ago that those Boss tuners need to be I didn't know they needed to be calibrated every now and then. Did you know that?
I found that out the hard way. I found that out the hard way.
I realized, I would tune a guitar, I'd give it to Navarro, and he'd play it, and it wouldn't sound right to everybody else. And come to realize you have to, for some stupid reason, they have to be calibrated. They're digital. I don't know how that works, but yeah.
I had to calibrate one of the Polytunes, the TC Electronic Polytune. I had to calibrate one of those, and
those need it too.
I was on side stage figuring it out. Like, well, how do I do this? So yeah, I found out the hard way. It was the same thing. I was tuning guitars. My first gig was with a guy who's a tone head, who hears things differently and hears things that nobody else hears. And so he was telling me, it's like this is not in tune when you're. And I was like, man, yeah, we did side by. He had a strobe tuner on stage. I had a TU2 on side stage, and I didn't want to learn how to use a strobe tuner. Not learn. I didn't want to go through that. Anyway,
yeah, they're dumb.
It's one of those things that I had to learn that way, and so yeah, I learned early on that you had to calibrate that.
Yeah, lesson learned.
But I'm like you, man. I'm not a great tech. I always say I'm a great hang.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the thing is, like, you can rely on me. I will never miss a bus call. I've never been drunk in my life, so I'm not going to show up hammered to a gig.
Yeah.
I'm reliable. I'm supportive. I keep things light, and I'm honest. So if I mess something up, I'll be the first person to tell the artist that, like, that was on me. But on the flip side, if it's on them, I will also tell them it's on them. Like, I have a tough time sometimes biting my tongue, but I try to be cool about it. But I think you would agree that one of the most important parts of this business is just having a good attitude and a good personality. Because I've been around plenty of technically unbelievable techs and people who are on tours, but if they have a bad attitude or treat people like shit, you're going to be gone pretty quick. You know, people, we live together, and it's a family out there, as you know, and everyone's really got to be pulling for each other and supportive of each other. Like, there's a lot of, your mental health goes to shit out there sometimes. You're away from home, you're missing holidays and funerals and weddings, which I don't mind missing weddings, but you gotta have a good attitude, and you gotta be supportive of your people out there, because you're kind of going to war every night, sort of, in some ways, and you're also part of a circus, and attitude is pretty much everything, I think.
Yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about what a typical day is like
Well, for a guitar tech, it's easier than a lot of jobs. You're the last one in, and you're the first one out, which is awesome. But depending on the gig, day starts at 9 or 10. And for Jane's Addiction, I've always done guitar and bass, so there's double the work. But both those guys have been pretty easy. Navarro doesn't like his strings changed very often, so every 2 or 3 shows. So I kind of roll in, take my time setting up, because the drums always take forever, so you can kind of pace yourself a little bit. And once line check or whatever's over, I'm kind of back on the bus, watching videos or trying to catch a nap or something. But my days are pretty easy. And then post show, depends on what we're doing, but we've been very, very lucky I've had nothing but great crews pretty much my whole career. So the hangs have always been a lot of fun. Get on the bus and people have drinks or take some edibles, watch some Beavis and Butthead, and life is good.
Can you tell us about any? No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Any memorable onstage mishaps that you may have been a part of?
Sure. Yeah, there's been plenty. One of my earliest shows with Jane's Addiction, they reunited with Eric Avery, the original bass player, in 2008, and they did a couple surprise warm-up shows in LA at these very tiny venues, like a couple hundred people in there, and one of them was called El Cid, and they're playing on stage. The place is packed. Super fans, nothing but super fans, including myself. It's such a cool night. And guitar goes out, and I'm still only, 2 or 3 years into my career, so you don't really. It's not automatic yet how to handle these things, and there's no guitar. It's at the beginning of one of their most emotive, beautiful, emotional songs that is very guitar driven. And so I'm out there trying to mess with the pedal board, check all the connections. And Perry, the singer, is trying to vamp and kill time. And Navarro, being the good friend, I'm ducking down, and he's pulling my head into his crotch in front of everybody, just kind of having a good time. And I'm sweating. It feels like it's been an hour. I go back and I unplug his Marshall head, and I replace the head. I replace all the cabling up there, fire up the new head. I mean, minutes have gone by now. Still no sound. And then I'm like, maybe it's just the instrument cable. So I changed the instrument cable, and that's all it was. And that's when I learned it's always the instrument cable. Almost always. But that was 3 or 4 minutes that felt like it was 2 hours. I mean, I was mortified and humiliated. The band was cool about it. They didn't really care. The crowd laughed. But for me, that was one of the toughest ones. But then I've also been punched in the head by Marilyn Manson on stage. So that was also not a very good one.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I would call that a mishap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it your fault? Was it?
No, it was definitely not my fault. We're in South Korea, and middle of the set, maybe 4 or 5 songs in, and I will say, I publicly have some issues with Marilyn Manson. It's not really that much of a secret, but this story has nothing to do with that. But He mid show having the worst show I've ever seen a human being have. Just a really, really rough show. And I'm at my keyboard station watching the keyboard player, and I just get slammed in the head. Like I thought a light or something had fallen from the truss, or like a wrench had fallen. And I looked behind me, and Manson's assistant is just like wide-eyed, pointing at me like, "Holy shit, what just happened?" And I was, yeah, he just walked behind me and punched me in the back of the head. That was pretty cool.
Oh my God. And the show went on?
I mean, if you call it a show, yeah, but we finished the set. But it was a rough night for him and for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the incidents on Manson's is never the other guy's fault.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's been plenty of times where he has, attacked or blamed other members of his band on stage for him forgetting lyrics or forgetting where he's at. It's easy to blame the drummer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you also have a. Well, I mean, we'll get back to your road, but you also have a podcast called Rare Form Radio.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What's it all about?
Nothing. I mean, that's the whole. It's just we have guests on there. We've had musicians and actors and comedians and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's just me getting together with friends and talking shit and just having a good time. I grew up a big Howard Stern fan. So, and the beauty of Howard Stern for me is like involving everybody, involving the whole crew, and anybody can be a guest. It doesn't matter the kind of person you're talking to. If they're interesting, have them on. And just, we make fun of ourselves a lot. My somewhat co-host and the producer of the show is a monitor guy. He's been doing monitors for Jane's for a long time. So it's a very family vibe, but it's really just, we're very, very, very stupid on that show. But occasionally we have some pretty serious shows. We have some really funny ones. We've had some really dark ones. There was one time a couple years ago where I interviewed a convicted murderer and a self-proclaimed cannibal, which was pretty wild. Over Skype. He wasn't in my house. It was over Skype. He'd served his time. He served his time. His name's Nico Clo. He's considered, he's called the Vampire of Paris, but he is a cannibal and a convicted murderer. Interviewed him for a couple hours, and then the next week I interviewed my mother for Mother's Day. So our show's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it's for all audiences. Yeah,
yeah. It's a wide range. So there's something for everybody.
Right on, man. And what?
Yeah.
Why did you start Rare Form Radio?
I had a podcast and a radio show with Dave Navarro for 10 years called Dark Matter Radio. And that initially started on actual radio here in LA on a station called Indie 103, which is just, it was such a cool radio station here. They went under, and then we started doing like internet radio with this company called Mohique and a couple other places. We went to Sirius for a minute. But for the most part, we just kind of did internet radio, video, and audio. It's myself, Todd Newman, which is Navarro's best friend, also the guy that I started Rare Form Radio with, and this girl, Jessica Saddleberger, who was a producer at Indie 103. And we did that show for 10 years, and I will say it was the most fun thing I've ever been a part of. We laughed so much on that show. Had some amazing guests. I eventually became the producer of that and started doing all the guest booking, and John Five and just Steve Vai and some just amazing guests.
Wow.
That was a really, really good time. So when that was ending, I knew I wanted to keep doing some kind of podcast radio stuff. So started Rare Form, and that's been about four or 5 years now.
Right on, man. Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this earlier, and I didn't, about Dave. I've recently started rewatching Sons of Anarchy and completely forgot that he's in, I think it's season 6.
Arcadio.
Yeah, Arcadio.
Yeah.
When he shows up, I'm like, that dude looks familiar.
Yep. I was on set that day. The day that he was killed, I was there with him on set, and it was cool because I loved that show. Actually, Marilyn Manson was on that show as well, and I was with him on set that day. So both those guys I was there on set for. But yeah, Dave was also on Law and Order, an episode of Law and Order at one point.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He played like a record producer, but yeah, he does some cool stuff. And I'm very lucky to be around to be with him for a lot of really, really cool things.
Yeah, I see all sorts of people now in Sons of Anarchy. After starting the second time, like Dave Kushner was on there. He's a background
theme song.
Yeah, he wrote the things. He's in the background playing guitar. Manson, I haven't got to his season yet. He's in the last season, but it's crazy. But yeah, when Arcadio showed up, I'm like, no.
Yeah, Dave has some really funny stories about being in a van with Charlie Hunnam, Jax from Sons of Anarchy, who arguably, I mean, he really is one of the best looking dudes on the planet. But Navarro would talk about speaking to him and getting lost in his eyes because he was so beautiful. It's really funny.
Hey, sounds a lot like me talking to somebody.
I know, I was going to say. I've heard similar words.
I always use the words dreamy. Hey, what advice would you give somebody that's starting out? Especially because you started out a lot like I did. I didn't know I was going to do this. I really didn't know it was a job. So what advice would you give somebody starting out?
I've been asked that a few times, and I would say, listen, pay attention, take your time. So go take a breath, give it a minute, and figure it out. Because when you rush, you make more mistakes. So I would say just take your time and just learn from every mistake. I know for me, I've learned way more from mistakes than I have from successes. And it's just about paying attention, listening to the people above you, listening to the people that have been there longer than you, and don't get too comfortable. Like, don't get complacent, and don't ever feel like you're unfireable, because as soon as you start feeling that way, when you get too comfortable, first of all, it's annoying to be around people. And I've actually been that way. There's a certain point where, like, I can't be fired. I've had this job forever, until the artist talks to you and says, listen, this is getting, things are getting a little too comfortable around here. You're not paying attention. And once you get that talk, it kind of brings you back to reality of like, okay, I got to remember that I'm lucky to be here. This is a good gig. I don't want to lose it. And you kind of like, just always be kind of reassessing where you're at. But really taking your time and listening are the two. And just be cool. Be nice to people. Be nice to the people on your crew, and be nice to locals. So when you walk in and you meet the local crew, please and thank you to them all day long. First of all, it feels nice. It makes me feel good to be nice to people, but also you will get more out of those people the kinder you are. Yeah. If you're a dick, they're not going to help you. And if you're nice, they will remember you next time you show up in town. So with Jane's, I've been with Jane so long that I'm definitely the longest member of the crew. So whenever anyone new comes in, we'll have a talk of like, listen, it's very important to us. We want the local crew to look forward to seeing us next time. And we want to be known as like the easiest, coolest crew to work with. So we got to focus on that. It means a lot to me just to be nice to people.
Yeah.
We're all lucky to be doing this. This is, we're paid really well for a job that is actually pretty fun. And it's good not to take it for granted.
100%.
What is your take on where things are headed? Do you see Gene's Addiction touring again?
No. No, I don't. That whole thing was really sad for so many reasons. Like, I love that band as a fan. The band guys, all of them, Perry included, they are family to me, and have taken care of me, and we've been through a lot together. So when that fell apart, it's been very difficult and very sad. But I personally don't see a road to fixing it anymore. So if it takes 5 years, I don't know. It's just, I personally just don't see it happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the way I know that the morning I found out of what happened, like it was, you never want to be part of that situation, whether you're the crew member, especially if you're the band member, but because then you become you become part of that story, man, no matter what, if you're associated with, something like that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I have weirdly found myself in the middle of a lot of strange public stories. And that one, I did not expect to get as much attention as it did, but I couldn't believe the amount of people that I got messages from saying they saw the whole thing on TV, and they saw me on TV breaking up the fight. And, I think my dad was finally proud of me because I was on Fox News. So that was cool. I finally earned his love, so that was great.
Oh my God, hilarious.
But the attention was crazy. It was wild. But regardless of all that, even the way it ended, I'm so grateful for all the times I've had with those guys. And I used to play on stage with them. I used to play acoustic guitar for Jane Says with them all the time. So I have these amazing memories. We're playing a show in Dallas or Houston, and as you do during the show, I'm checking Twitter. This is 2000. Maybe 8 or 9, I forget what it was. Maybe 10, I don't know. And I see on my phone on Twitter that Osama bin Laden was just killed. So this is the middle of the set. So between songs, I go and tell Navarro, like, dude, we just killed bin Laden. So there's a video out there, and he goes and tells Perry, like, we just killed bin Laden. So we got to announce to this Texas crowd that we just killed the biggest terrorist in the world. And the USA chant started, and it was kind of a cool, kind of wildly historic moment. But it's those kind of things I'll never forget.
Right on, man.
Just cool moments like that. Yeah.
Right on. Do you have another gig coming up?
No. After the Jane's thing, I mean, it kind of sent me into a little bit of a depression, and I'm not someone who usually gets bummed out, but it was just kind of like a dramatic, weird way at the years of work. And so I'm kind of just reassessing. I took a couple weeks to kind of just be bummed out and kind of let myself feel whatever I had to feel. And got a few offers right away, but I want to take the rest of the year just to kind of chill out and reassess next year. I know I have some offers for next year for other stuff, but we'll see what happens. I'm not someone, I don't love touring. It's not like I just want to be on the road all the time. I prefer being home. I love being home. So I'm not frantically looking for work, but if the right thing comes along, I would definitely do it.
Right on, man. Any names that would be the right thing? I always tell Lisa, like, if these guys called, I would bail right now.
Sure. I have a couple of those in mind. There's a couple artists would call that I would have to do it, but I'm not going to say it out loud. I don't want to ruin it. Sorry about my Wi-Fi.
It's all right. It's all right. We were saying, you recently flew into DC for these UFO hearings. Is there anything you could talk about? And then Lisa said, or anything you can tell us?
Yeah. What can you tell us?
I have been a UFO, I've been fascinated by UFO since I was about 8 years old. Little boys are either, do you want to be a police officer, or you're into NASA or dinosaurs? I've always just loved UFOs. And we're living in a crazy time where as we're speaking right now, there's a U.S. Air Force base in London that has had multiple orbs or drones circling over it for 5 straight days. It's all over the news in London. But this crazy stuff happens, and Navy admirals and fighter pilots talking about, seeing these crafts every single day out on the oceans, and people testifying under oath that we have retrieved crashed UFOs and we're trying to reverse engineer these things, and that we have like alien bodies recovered. It's fascinating to me, just from like a science and nature aspect. But going to DC and going to Congress and seeing a hearing in person, topic aside, just being there to see our government like in action was a very, very, very cool experience. But to be front row at like a UFO hearing was just mind blowing. And something I'm really happy I did. Actually, after Jane's broke up, I told myself I'm going to start saying yes to more things, and I want to kind of just go on more adventures. And so last minute, I booked the flight out there. A friend of mine, his name is Jeremy Corbell. He's like one of the biggest guys in the UFO field who's done tons of work and bring witnesses forward. And he's the one that kind of invited me and said, come in with me and sit with me front row. And it was amazing. And yes, I did hear some stuff off the record behind the scenes that is blowing my fucking mind that I can't talk about. But even the stuff that's public out there is astounding. Do you guys have interest in this at all?
I do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
and how do you guys feel? Like, where do you think we're at? Like, what do you believe? What line do you draw? I'm so interested.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I mean, there's definitely other life out there for sure. And, I mean, you'd be an idiot to think that we're the only people or the only life forms, the only planet. And, I just worry, what we would do. I've talked to my husband about it, and we always say that it would be like destroy them before they destroy us. And like, why would it have to be like that? I don't know. I would want it to be more of a make friends with them. But for some reason, he thinks it would be more of a, we go after them or some kind of thing. I don't know. But I definitely think there's something there, and I would like to be friends. Ideally, I think.
And same here. I think I've been saying since I was a teenager, like we'd be pretty arrogant to think we're the only ones here.
I'm with.
We have all this space out there, like, But isn't that the human way, right? Isn't that the human way to think? This is all ours.
Yeah.
Hey, there you are.
Hey.
Yeah. We're back.
Yeah.
Jesus. Sorry, guys.
It's all right. Sorry. We were just like, were we that boring?
No. I didn't even sign out. Just my whole thing just closed. I guess what I was saying was, it's a very human take to think that we're the only things out in the universe, that we're the center of the universe. But to be honest, when it comes to UFOs, I think that there's something that's already here, that's been here long before us. And I do think that they're in the oceans. I think they've been in the oceans for thousands and thousands of years, is my guess.
Yeah.
Living under there?
Yeah.
Yep. Because if you think about the Navy sees them. The Navy, for at least 20 years, the Navy has come in contact with UFOs over both coasts every single day for 20 years. To the point that they're told now, just don't go near them. Like, just leave them alone. Every day. And there's on record, there's, Navy warships that have nukes on them that at one point had 100 craft hovering above this nuclear ship. So, I mean, the evidence is truly astounding. And I know people are probably thinking like that we sound crazy now, but it's just nature. It's science, and it's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. I don't think people now, it doesn't sound as crazy as people would think it sounded, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. If you said anything about UFOs around 20 years ago, you were a nut. You know,
it's
you
true.
were. I mean, people were like, "What do you mean there are no UFOs? What are you, an idiot?"
Yeah. I mean, so many of my like closest friends and, you know, the childhood girlfriends and my family, I've been into it my whole life, and I'm getting so many texts and phone calls now being like, you must be so excited. Like it is a crazy time. But the world always keeps you guessing. It's fun.
Hang on. Well, Dan, man, we really appreciate your time. You know,
Anytime. Let's do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people find you online, and where can they find Rare Form Radio?
Sure. You can find me, Instagram, Twitter. I just joined Blue Sky for whatever reason. At Dan Cleary 79 is you can find me. At Rare Form Radio. You can find that on YouTube as well if you want to watch anywhere you get podcasts. And I also just started a UFO podcast as well. And that is called Others from Another Mother. And you can find that also on YouTube and anywhere you get podcasts, and all the social media is OFAM Podcast. But that one I'm really excited about. And actually, I'm going to talk to you guys, because what I'm trying to do is with the UFO one is, you know, everyone talks to the same UFO experts and all that kind of stuff. We want to bring in, my partner and I, who is a music producer, record producer, we want to bring in people from music and film, actors and musicians and producers and crew people, and just get different voices talking about it. So maybe we'll do that at some point.
Yeah, we'd love to. I'd love to.
Yep. But thank you guys for having me. This is a lot of fun.
For sure, man. The podcast, it's called Is Breakfast Included? If we were having breakfast, what would you have?
I'm not a breakfast guy. I don't like breakfast at all.
Coffee?
No, I don't drink coffee. If I have anything, I'll have like truly like it's so I'm a child, but I'll have chocolate chip cookies for breakfast sometimes. But my first meal of the day is usually like a late lunch or dinner. But I've never been a breakfast person because I'm not a morning person. You know, I got up today at 11:30 p.m. So I'm just breakfast is not my thing. What about you guys? What's your breakfast of choice?
I'm a pancake guy.
Okay, with chocolate chips or just plain?
Plain. The chocolate chips, I save them for Lisa's husband.
What?
He likes chocolate chip pancakes.
Oh, you save them for him to order.
Yeah.
It sounds like you pick them out. Like,
I pick them out and give him no, he likes chocolate chip pancakes.
I got these for you. Yeah.
I don't know. I usually just do something boring like eggs or something. But
my favorite breakfast food is probably a bagel and cream cheese. That would probably be my go-to. Okay. That's my early morning. If I need food at the airport, going to a gig or whatever, I'll get a bagel and cream cheese.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, man.
Yeah, and, thank you so much.
I see this as a long-term friendship, man.
Agreed.
You and I we have lots in common. So
yep. I hope to see you out on the road at some point.
Yeah, I'll send you my number.
Please do.
Yeah. And you're in LA, correct?
I am.
All right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much.
It's already dark here.
Is it? Oh, of course. We're in the winter's beginning. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. And next time we do it, I'll try to have better Wi-Fi. Sorry about that.
That's fine, man. Thanks a lot for your time, buddy.
Of course. I'll see you.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Right on. Dan Cleary. Great guy, huh? It's a lot of fun talking to him, getting to know him. You can find out more about Dan at Rare Form Radio on Instagram, or check out his new podcast, Others from Another Mother, and you can find that on Instagram at OFAM Podcast. Check him out, man. Give him a listen. Support. Join his Patreon. While you're online, check out isbreakfast.com. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, man, it's that time of year. Check out our store. Buy your friends a shirt. Buy them 2 shirts. Got lots of colors, 2 designs. Check it out. All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.